Susan Pence, Hufflepuff. Justin Finley, Hufflepuff. In the large and beautifully decorated exhibition hall, a wrinkled hat with a big mouth that splits from the edge, twisting restlessly while singing, and occasionally being squeezed by a few undaunted little wizards. The brim of the hat gave out bursts of weird laughter. As the names of the students and the colleges assigned to them were spoken from the sorting cap, the little wizards clapped their hands warmly or perfunctorily on the seats below. At least in this orientation party, even Gryffindor and Slytherin, who are displeased with each other, will maintain this relatively harmonious scene. The little wizards waiting for the distribution academy in the audience were nervous or expectant, watching other people put on the sorting hat, and then walked to the corresponding academy seat in the funny tone of the hat. However, among the new students, there is a thin boy who is out of place. He is looking blankly at the gorgeous and retro decorations and candles suspended in midair. The bright lights of the hall are illuminating the auditorium. It was bright, and translucent ghosts could be seen flying through the air all around. Everything made the boy a little bit adaptable for a while, and it took a long time before he muttered to himself. "Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Strange, am I dying in the hospital bed?" Just as the boy felt familiar and unfamiliar with everything around him, a loud female voice resounded in the large exhibition hall. "Yvonne Halls." Professor Minerva McGonagall stood at the four-corner table where the sorting cap was placed, looking at the parchment scroll in her hand, but waited for a long time and did not see the new students come up, so she frowned and said loudly again. "Yvonne Halls. I haven't seen any movement in the freshmen for a long time, and now even Dumbledore cast a suspicious look, and the old students from the major colleges talked in private. Who's Yvonne? So courageous. It's not going the wrong way, you missed the sorting ceremony, right? This is interesting." At this time, the remaining freshmen, under the gaze of many professors and seniors, moved a few steps behind them. Only the boy with blonde hair and black pupils who had not figured out his condition remained standing still, looking very conspicuous. "Mr. Yvonne Halls, please come to the stage here." Professor McGonagall repeated it again. "Me?" Yvonne pointed to himself in a dazed manner, and suddenly felt that this scene was a bit strange but unexpectedly familiar. "Yes, please come up as soon as possible. Just like others have done, there are other children who need to be sorted out." Perhaps because Yvonne is a freshman, although Professor McGonagall spoke for the fourth time when I asked, I didn't mean to be angry at all, but I felt that the new student might be a little nervous. Before Yvonne could react, he felt that he was nudged slightly, and then the freshmen in the front row also unexpectedly pushed Yvonne onto the stage one by one with tacit understanding. "Okay, kid, come over here soon." Professor McGonagall stepped forward, put Ivan's shoulders on the chair, and picked up the sorting hat and pressed it on Ivan's head. The sorting hat twisted his body restlessly on Ivan's head, and said strangely, "Hey, boy, don't be too shy, you are not the first person to feel nervous in such a place. Trust me, it's over with closed eyes. It doesn't hurt at all." Yvonne rolled his eyes. After staying in the new place for a while, he also had some guesses about the current situation, but he still felt a little unbelievable. "But, is this really Hogwarts? That magical place where magic is taught? But that's not." Yvonne couldn't help thinking about it, but the voice of the sorting hat rang in Ivan's ears. "Yes. Of course, this is Hogwarts. You are not dreaming, I am 100% sure. I guess you must come from a Muggle family, right? Every few years, there are always a few new little wizards who don't believe that magic is real. They say it's all tricks and they want to get it out of my body. Here comes a rabbit with long ears, I told them there was nothing in the hat, but they didn't believe it." The sorting hat was making a silly joke, and the split mouth almost extended to the brim of the hat. The ability of the sorting hat to read memories made Yvonne not daring to think too much, so he quickly condensed his mind. But perhaps because of the influence of the sorting hat, Ivan's mind was like a slideshow, flashing through sections of strange memories. The scattered Yvonne couldn't piece it together. It seemed that a witch was teaching her own magic. The witch in my memory is about 30, with beautiful long blonde hair, and talking with her mouth open. Then Yvonne only felt a panic of fear hit her heart. The Sorting Hat is also the first time I have seen such a messy little wizard, but I am also surprised that Yvonne is not from a Muggle family. How can children from a wizard family not know Hogwarts? A cold sweat appeared on Ivan's forehead. Although the various thoughts and memories read by the Sorting Hat belonged to the original owner, he didn't know if this hat would read any important secrets. Fan can only try to force himself to think about something insignificant. Ahem. Seeing that the Sorting Hat seemed to have an endless posture, Professor McGonagall had to cough slightly to remind the Sorting Hat on the stage to do business quickly. The Sorting Hat stopped talking, and Yvonne was finally relieved, but he was also a little curious about which college he would be assigned to. Well, let me see, optimistic, smart and like crazy thinking. The Sorting Hat dragged a long tone, suddenly lowered his voice and said. And a little bit of black magic. I can black magic. Yvonne was confused and remembered the memory just now. Oh, yes, an ancient and rare, black magic. The Sorting Hat whispered and chatted with Yvonne, as if whispering something. Of course, in my opinion this is also an interesting black magic. UU reading www.uuganshu.com always allows people to see things they don't want to see. Someone has used it to prank, maybe you can do it too. Try. Although Dumbledore definitely doesn't want anyone to do it again. The Sorting Hat complained to himself. Where should I go? Slytherin. Yvonne was a little curious about how he could black magic, but the most important thing now was the issue of sorting. After dividing the courtyard, he can take off this hat that can read memories. In the 4 colleges of Hogwarts, entering Gryffindor requires enough bravery. What Ravenclaw wants is wisdom or a desire for knowledge. Slytherin corresponds to a cunning and insidious character and outstanding magic talent. As for Hufflepuff, Yvonne feels that Hufflepuff Academy is usually responsible for accepting the remaining students. The Sorting Hat said that learning dark magic is very much in line with the standards of Slytherin College. Of course, it is also possible that he was assigned to Ravenclaw because of his optimism and intelligence. Yvonne thinks a little narcissistically. No, neither. The Sorting Hat's tone suddenly became humorous. Although it will make you a little sad to say that, Slytherin usually only chooses some talented little wizards, so. Gryffindor. The Sorting Hat changed the soft whisper when whispering with Yvonne, and the loud voice resounded throughout the hall. Gryffindor. Yvonne took the Sorting Hat off the top of his head, a little surprised, and even too late to complain about the Sorting Hat's evaluation of his talent. Yes, you should go there. The Sorting Hat vowedly said. I have never missed it, you have the corresponding quality. Yvonne was still ready to ask again. The cheerful applause from the audience had already sounded. Yvonne had to press down on his stomach full of questions, put the Sorting Hat on the 4-corner table, and walked down the steps. Seeing Yvonne coming down, several senior students moved aside in Gryffindor's seat to make room. A pair of twin brothers with the same appearance and fiery red hair pressed Yvonne to the space in the middle, and one of them spoke with an exaggerated tone. Gosh, I bet you dare not give Professor McGonagall face so much in the freshman sorting ceremony. You are definitely the first one. This is really. What is it really? Yvonne asked in confusion. It's so brave. The other of the twin brothers took the conversation. You are destined to become a legend in the academy. The two looked at each other and said in unison. Hearing the answers from the two, Yvonne almost didn't pick it up in one breath. The brain circuits of the two brothers were so strange that he couldn't understand it. Well, thank you. Yvonne politely thanked the twin brothers for their blessing, and then asked. My name is Yvonne Halls, how about you? I'm George Weasley, and that's Fred over there. One of the twin brothers spoke first, blinking at Ivan. You'd better remember, don't admit your mistakes next time you meet. Fred hates people calling him wrong. Okay, George, I don't think I will admit that I am wrong. Ivan is clear about the trick of the two brothers swapping identities. Naturally he will not be fooled, and turn to the other of the twin brothers. Are you right, Fred? Fred, who was thinking about playing with his brother as a newbie, was stunned, and George, who had spoken to Ivan before, was also taken aback for a while before asking. Wait, how do you know I am George's? This is easy to guess, isn't it? Who in the freshman doesn't know that your Weasley brothers like pranks? Of course, Ivan couldn't say that he saw it from a book, but could only make a temporary excuse to fool it. Gosh, are we so famous already? Even the freshmen know it. George and Fred said in surprise, feeling that so many years of fighting against the Hogwarts school rules finally came to fruition. Puff Ron, who was feasting and eating, almost squirted out the food in his mouth. When did his two brothers become so famous among the freshmen at Hogwarts? Why doesn't he know? George and Fred were a little curious that Ivan whispered to the Sorting Hat on stage. It was the first time they saw someone chatting with that hat for so long. Ivan fooled the past half-truth. After all, knowing black magic in Gryffindor Academy is not something to show off. By the way, Ivan took the opportunity to turn the topic to George and Fred's adventure career at Hogwarts School, and inquired about the location and information of the secret passages in Hogwarts. Ivan, who has read the original, naturally knows that George and Fred have a magic map that can show most of the hidden passages of Hogwarts and mark the names of people inside. With it, you can travel freely in this magic castle without worrying about being discovered by professors and administrators. Although Ivan has read the original in his previous life and knows many secrets of Hogwarts, after all, he can't remember it. This map is still very useful. And the Weasley brothers, facing Ivan, who is like a little fan, naturally revealed a lot of information unguardedly, and even wanted to win Ivan into the great cause of pranks. However, there is no disclosure about the magic map. Ivan was not surprised. After all, it was the first time I met. No matter how good the conversation, it is impossible to reveal such an important secret. Ivan just wants to gain some good impressions to pave the way for the future. But at this moment, an inexplicable voice suddenly rang in Ivan's mind. The information column that appeared in front of me was as expected by Ivan. Reading www.uuganshu. The com is only part of the content in the information column, which is a bit beyond Ivan's expectations. Fear curse? Magic item production. Ivan slowly muttered to himself. As a little wizard who has just crossed over and hasn't even fully figured out the situation, he will naturally not bring these two abilities. Thinking of the memory that had appeared in his mind when he was on stage just now, Ivan suddenly understood that he should be in possession of it. This little wizard named Ivan Halls had learned magic before entering school. This situation is not uncommon among little wizards. It is important to know that even Hermione Granger, who was born in a Muggle family, can master some simple magic through self-study before entering school, let alone those who were born in the little wizard of the wizard family. But the magic of fear, Ivan thought for a long time but had no impression. It seemed that it was not the magic that appeared in the original book. Ivan is not surprised. After all, Harry Potter is just a novel, and it is only a corner of the magic world. It is impossible to show all the magic in every aspect, and the black magic in the original text is even rarer. A real black wizard can't only have so few black magic. After all, just the restricted book zone of Hogwarts, I don't know how many black magic books there are. Of course, what Ivan is more curious or worried about is the family situation of the original owner. A family that can teach their children dark magic before school is obviously not good. Ivan is very worried about his safety. If someone finds out that Ivan Halls, a little wizard, is occupied by a soul from another world, God knows what kind of dark magic is waiting for him. A piercing heart to meet? Still burned to death with fierce fire? Yvonne couldn't help but shudder thinking about the tragic experience that might happen, trying hard to retrieve the memory of the original body. Didn't know if it was because of the crossing, these memories seemed to be shattered and hidden in the depths, letting Yvonne want to break his head was nothing. Damn it, if only I could remember more memories. Yvonne muttered to himself with a headache. It seems that before the end of the semester, he must learn to contemplate the mind, and then find a way to use the meditation basin in the principal's office to sort it out. Memory, otherwise it is very likely to wear help. In other words, Yvonne doesn't even know where his home is now. There is no one who can mix with him. Harry Potter. Just as Ivan's head was thinking about how to get into the forbidden book area and learn to take the mind, Professor McGonagall's high voice drew Ivan's attention back to the sorting ceremony. It's not just Yvonne. At this moment, all the little wizards and professors turned their eyes to the stage, like a repeat of Yvonne when he took the stage, but obviously Ivan's little speciality is naturally incomparable with the prestige of the savior. As a thin and cramped little wizard with glasses came onto the stage, there was a warm applause from below, and the second-year Gryffindors next to Yvonne were all red with their palms, staring fiercely. Looking at the forehead that was covered by a little hair, he seemed to expect to see the lightning-like scar. Harry Potter? Is she talking about Harry Potter? My mother said he defeated the mysterious man when he was born. I wish he could be assigned to Gryffindor. Yvonne also followed the crowd applauded to welcome, otherwise it would be too maverick in this seat. Of course, Yvonne also thinks this is the glory that Harry deserves. After all, Harry's miserable life of being bullied in childhood stems from the death of his parents. Had it not been for the protection magic that Lily Potter launched at the expense of her life that caused the mighty Voldemort to lose his power, the magic world would not know how many people would die. When they heard that Harry Potter was about to enter Gryffindor, the little wizards in the seats were even more mad. The Weasley twins hugged each other in excitement and shouted, "Potter! We have Potter!" The applause from Slytherin was much lighter. Especially the Slytherin chief who was leaning on the front row, after hearing the Sorting Hat say that Harry had refused to enter Slytherin, his complexion was a bit unpleasant. Yvonne silently saw everything in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth chuckled, knowing that it was because Harry's savior's aura was still there. After a while, everyone discovered that apart from the title, Harry Potter also when I was just an ordinary little wizard, I'm afraid I wouldn't care so much. Yvonne murmured in his heart, but raised his eyes and glanced at Dumbledore, who was looking at Harry with a smile, and suddenly felt that the prefect Slytherin's concern was right. After all, the principal helped the savior to open up, and the others didn't say anything. At least the College Cup Slytherin these semesters is not to think about. Seeing Harry walking down the stage, Gryffindor's prefect Percy Weasley could not wait to shake hands with Harry almost the moment Harry stepped off the stage. Most people have also vacated their positions next to each other one after another, seemingly wishing to have a good chat with the savior. Even George and Fred ran to join in the fun, and Ivan's side suddenly became empty. Yvonne didn't mean to join in the fun. He was enjoying the big meal in front of him without regard to his own. They all said that the food of the Rotten Country was authentic black cuisine, but the food at Hogwarts was unexpectedly good. Yvonne thinks this may be related to the Hogwarts food is house elves, rather than British wizards. Vaguely, Yvonne seemed to feel someone staring at him, and when he looked up, he saw Dumbledore staring at him with his bright silver eyes. Yvonne didn't have the slightest stage fright, and after smiling at Dumbledore pretending to be well-behaved and shy, he put a large piece of cake into his mouth in one bite, and swallowed it in threes or twos. Maybe it's because Yvonne is full of food, or Dumbledore was just on a whim. After smiling back, the greatest white wizard turned his gaze to other places. After the sorting ceremony was over, there was still plenty of time for the little wizards to eat. Yvonne ate enough to no longer hold it, and Dumbledore waved his wand to remove the leftovers. The food filled with food disappeared without a trace, just as it suddenly appeared before. The magic of magic, for the upper-grade little wizard who has seen it many times, has long been familiar, but for Ivan, who has really experienced magic for the first time, it is still very new. Dumbledore stood up slowly at this time, reading www. The eyes of UUGonshu.com also focused on the stage following Dumbledore's actions. Since we are all fed and drunk, let me say a few more words. I am going to post a few announcements of the school start now. Dumbledore's voice echoed in the hall, his eyes swept over the new students standing under the stage, and then he looked at Brother Weasley. New students should pay special attention, the woods on the playground are strictly prohibited for students to enter. I think this point should also be kept in mind by senior students. Our administrator, Mr. Filch, wants me to remind you that you are not allowed to use magic in the hallway between classes. The Quidditch player test will be conducted in the second week. After briefly emphasizing the rules that exist in each semester, Dumbledore paused briefly and raised his tone again. Finally, I must warn you that people who do not want to die tragically should not go to the third-floor corridor on the right within this year. Ivan couldn't help but complain about Dumbledore's fishing remarks after listening. Guang said how dangerous it was, but didn't reveal other news, or even why you couldn't go there, with a mysterious look. How could this make some little wizards who are full of curiosity bear it? Sure enough, Dumbledore's stern warning didn't seem to have had its due effect. A few freshmen even laughed indifferently, but the senior students showed serious expressions. Of course, this does not include the two Weasley brothers with serious faces. The two are discussing something secretly. Ivan guessed that they might go to the corridor that could make people tragic to take a look. It's just that Ivan felt that before that, Dumbledore would talk to them in person in advance, or let Administrator Filch focus on them, lest they do something. After emphasizing the precautions for this semester, Dumbledore seemed to have become the kind of a little incongruous headmaster, wearing a slightly crooked wizard hat on his head, and said loudly, "Before going to bed, let us sing the school song together." As Dumbledore's voice fell, Ivan clearly saw the faces of the professors on the stage changed, and several senior students were also constipated. And Dumbledore was waving his wand on his own, and a long golden ribbon floated out of the wand, turning into words like a snake. The wand is like a baton. Under the guidance of Dumbledore, the Hogwarts school song sung by the whole school resounded in the hall. Hogwarts, 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 please teach us, whether it is old or bald, or a young man with idiotic legs, our heads can be filled with novelty, something interesting. Various versions and various tunes were put together in a jumbled manner, and the Weasley brothers, who tried to mislead everyone in the mix, Ivan also sang a few words along with them. After singing, I unexpectedly felt that this was mixed the tone. It seems pretty good. Ivan couldn't help but wondered if there was a problem with his music aesthetic. Fortunately, there is also the Principal Dumbledore who has the same feeling. The respected white wizard was moved to tears under the influence of music. It took a long time to break free from the melody. He wiped his tears while reminding all levels. Long can go back. Ivan followed Gryffindor's freshman flow along the spiral staircase to the highest floor. At the end of the corridor, Percy stopped on a wall with a portrait of a fat woman. Before the new students could ask, everyone saw the fat woman move, changed her posture, and said solemnly, "What is the password?" "Dragon scum," Percy replied. The fat woman nodded, stepped aside, revealing a round hole in the wall, and Ivan knew that this was Gryffindor's common room inside. After entered, Ivan realized that this place was much bigger than he thought. The red lion flag representing Gryffindor is hung in the air. There are several long tables neatly placed in the wide lounge. Under the long tables are comfortable chairs. The dark brown fireplace is against the left wall. The burning flame illuminates the cold at the same time. Gryffindor's bedroom is for 5 people. There are 5 four-poster beds in the spacious room. Underneath are their respective luggage, neatly stacked aside. As there is no corresponding memory, Ivan can't even recognize his suitcase and bed. Just as Ivan was waiting for his roommate to choose a bed first, a grey-white owl suddenly flew from the top of the railing on the west side to Ivan's shoulder, and pecked Ivan's face intimately. Maka. Ivan was taken aback for a moment, and then he remembered the name for no apparent reason. Cuckoo, the grey-white owl replied. Whether it is or not, I will call you Maka from now on. Ivan stretched out his hand and scratched the owl's neck. Maka narrowed his eyes comfortably. With Maka's guidance, Ivan quickly confirmed that the bed on the west side against the wall was his own. There were very few things around, except for bedding and pillows, but some clothes, daily necessities, and a few books to bring. The textbook. It is worth mentioning that Ivan found a small sign next to his bed with the words Ivan Halls intimately engraved on it. Other beds also have similar brands, but Ivan didn't notice it just now. Not long after Ivan stayed alone in the dormitory, there was a sound of pushing the door outside, followed by a slightly familiar voice. Unexpectedly, the sorting house is just wearing a hat. I thought I was going to fight against the giant monsters. I knew I shouldn't believe George's nonsense. Pushing through the door was a little wizard with fiery red hair and freckles on the bridge of his nose. His mouth was babbling and talking, while the little boy behind him was wearing spectacles and looked a little thin. Harry? Ron? Ivan was somewhat surprised. It was a coincidence that he was in the same bedroom as the savior Harry. Hello, I am Ivan Halls. Ivan stepped forward and said hello. Hey, this is Ron Weasley. Ron also noticed the existence of Ivan. Hello, this is Harry Potter. Harry also stretched out his hand at this time. Ivan first shook hands with Harry, then looked at Ron and smiled. Just now at the meeting, your brother George and Fred mentioned you to me. Oh, damn, I don't believe they would say anything good about me. Ron thought about the way George and Fred play tricks on himself, and he was angry. Harry was a little pleased with Ivan's attitude different from other people. After all, since he entered the wizarding world, every time he encountered other wizards, he was either making a fuss or wanting to see the lightning scar on his head. I have to say that Harry thinks this behavior is really stupid. UU reading www.uucanonshoe.com. The friendship between the little wizards can sometimes be established in a short time. What's more, Ivan, who has read the original book, knows the two of them, and deliberately caters to them, so naturally they quickly become friends. Harry talked about the unfair treatment he received before he came to the wizarding world in the dormitory, while Ron was talking about one or two funny things that were teased by the Weasley twins. Not long after, Neville and another little wizard who shared the same dormitory they also joined together, and they talked until late before going to bed and resting. The successive changes throughout the night made Ivan really tired. Almost immediately after touching the bed, his body weakened and he couldn't get up again. Even the originally planned exploration system plan was forgotten. Vaguely, only the sound of Ron scrambling the mice could be heard. Ivan raised his eyes and looked at it, then put the quilt over his head, and his lips moved silently. Hello, Hogwarts. Early the next morning, Ivan woke up from his dream and looked around blankly. It took him a long time to realize what was about to go to class. Suddenly he was about to be transferred from the hospital bed to the classroom, and for a while, Ivan was still a little bit unable to adapt. However, in the first class at Hogwarts, Ivan did not intend to be late. Although it was still early, Ivan felt that he had set off earlier, considering the awkward stairs in Hogwarts. Great! Of course, before leaving, I didn't forget to call Ron and Harry, who were still lying in bed. I don't know whether it was the influence of Harry's savior's halo or Ivan's bad luck. When he went downstairs, he encountered two steps that disappeared. Poor Ron even hit the wall disguised as a door. Fortunately, it was because of Ron's personal demonstration that Ivan and Harry were spared. The THRE Epperson team finally stepped into the classroom before class, I bet. Those stairs must be deliberately aimed at us, trying to make us late. Ron rubbed his still red nose, stepped into the classroom first, and glanced at the empty podium. It was a sigh of relief. It seems that we are not too late. The professor hasn't arrived yet. Harry also gave Yvonne a somewhat grateful look at this time. Fortunately, he got up early today, otherwise he would definitely be late. No, I think the professor has arrived. Yvonne ignored the words of the two, but glanced at the brindle cat on the podium, and then quickly returned to his seat. Harry and Ron were confused, but after they sat down, they saw the brindle cat on the podium suddenly jumped off the stage, distorted and deformed, and when they landed, they had become a middleman. The young witch is Professor McGonagall. Harry and Ron were stunned. They understood what Yvonne was talking about. They just didn't understand how Yvonne knew that Professor McGonagall changed the cat. Also surprised is Professor McGonagall. She used the form of Animagus to observe the situation of the little wizards in this class, and also to use the transformation of Animagus as this transformation technique. At the beginning of the class, I didn't expect to be recognized by a student. Chong Yifan nodded with a slight approval, and Professor McGonagall started the teaching content of the first transformation class. Before starting the class, I want to remind you that Transfiguration is arguably one of the most complex and dangerous spells you will learn in Hogwarts school. Whoever wants to be in my class, if you are mischievous, get out immediately and never come back. Professor McGonagall waved his staff and turned the podium in front of him into a pig. Amid the exclamation of many little wizards, he changed the podium back. Yvonne sat in the front position, seeing the whole process of transformation clearly. Accurate, fast, flawless. Being able to transform a wooden podium into a creature with consciousness is tantamount to directly changing the structure of matter, and even temporarily endowing the dead with intelligence. The mystery and power of magic are undoubtedly revealed at this moment. The magic of the wizarding world may be slightly inferior in destructive power, but it has its own uniqueness in other aspects, and it is comprehensive and complete. Professor McGonagall's demonstration immediately aroused the interest of the little wizards. After explaining the methods and techniques for the release of the Transfiguration Curse, he distributed a match to all the students. The goal was to turn the match into a silver needle. When Professor McGonagall started to explain the Transfiguration Curse, a reminder rang through Ivan's mind. Yvonne called up the information bar and took a look, and there was an extra line of information in the magic bar. Transfiguration Curse Level 0. Seeing that the content was as expected, Yvonne was a little delighted, which means that no matter what kind of magic it is, you only need to repeat the practice to increase your proficiency and you can quickly learn it. But after Yvonne repeated the practice for half a class, he realized that it seemed not as simple as he thought. Yvonne Halls. Mr. Halls. The stern and loud voice echoed in the closed classroom, attracting the attention of the little wizards in the front and rear rows. Professor McGonagall, who had not spoken until then, turned his head abruptly, and the little wizards turned their heads angrily, or waved their wands over and over again at the match in front of them in distress or entanglement, trying to make it happen even a little bit. The change. Professor McGonagall looked around for a week, and saw that the matches on the table of a little witch with tousled hair had changed significantly, with more or less the appearance of needles, and then loosened her tight lips, revealing a trace of satisfaction. Look! After warning the little wizards who were still fishing with his eyes, Professor McGonagall was able to turn his gaze to the stupefied boy in front of him, and said sternly, "Mr. Halls, I think I should have reminded you before that the release of the spell is very dangerous, and you should stay focused before releasing the magic. In addition, repeating mechanical exercises does not provide much help. I think you should be more attentive, focused, and imagine what the silver needle looks like." "Yes, Professor McGonagall, I will pay attention." Yvonne Halls nodded politely, condensed his mind under the witch's gaze, and the wand in his hand was nearly 12 inches high in the air with a strange frequency wave. On the black-grey wooden table, a match seemed to be driven by some kind of force out of thin air, twisted and deformed, slowly changing its shape under the action of magic. However, when the match was slowly deformed, it seemed to have been disturbed, and it changed back to its original state in an instant. This situation did not seem to be beyond what Professor McGonagall expected. After seeing this situation, he just nodded and left a sentence for more practice, then turned his head and left. After all, most of the little wizards who just started school are also like this. That's all. The disciples left Yvonne Halls muttering a low sigh. It seems that accumulating proficiency is not so easy. After trying most of the class, Yvonne has long lost the excitement he had before. Because the growth rate of proficiency has slowed down after the previous surge, and it is not possible to increase proficiency every time. After a period of exploration, Yvonne feels that this is not so much practice to increase the proficiency of skills, but rather to present his own level in the form of proficiency. After most of the class time, Yvonne couldn't even do a stable transformation spell for a long time. Just as Yvonne Halls was driving in a transfiguration class, he was suddenly poked a few times with his finger. Yvonne turned his head, only to realize that Harry, who was excited, was pointing at the two pointed, faintly shiny unidentified objects on the table in front of him and shouting loudly. "Hey, Yvonne! Look, I did it, I did it!" "Well, yes. Harry, you are amazing and talented." Yvonne glanced at the unknown objects on the table and nodded. The first class of transfiguration can make the matches change significantly. Fixed form for a long time, is already the upper level among the little wizards, at least, much more powerful than him. Right? I didn't expect that, my uncle, they are all muggles. Before entering school, I always wondered if I could release magic. Was affirmed by Yvonne, and Harry also gushed out his previous worries. Before entering the magical world, Harry was nothing more than an ordinary 11-year-old boy. He suddenly became the savior in the eyes of everyone. Although he received unimaginable attention and glory, he also accepted the difficulty. The pressure of imagination. Harry even thought about the embarrassing scene where he could not learn magic, but fortunately the situation has not changed so badly. Yvonne was not surprised by Harry's rapid learning of magic. After all, the Sorting Hat made it clear when he assigned the academy to be brave, kind, and extremely talented. The Sorting Hat even suggested that Harry go to Slytherin Academy. In the 3rd grade, he used the Guardian who had just learned it to destroy or drive away hundreds of Dementors. Had it not been for Hogwarts' free education to be overly happy, it is estimated that the talented savior before graduation would have the ability to be a professor at last. Regarding this, Yvonne said that he did not envy at all. There are only a few talented little wizards after all. Yvonne took a peek left and right and found that most of the little wizards were of this level. He sighed a little bit of relief. Without expecting it, I heard Professor McGonagall's high voice again. "Very well, Miss Granger. You can see, Miss Granger successfully transformed the match into a silver needle. Gryffindor adds 5 points." In the aisle not a few steps away from Ivan's seat, Professor McGonagall was holding a silver needle aloft, and gestured to the little wizards around him. Miss Granger sitting upright, with grey and brown hair scattered randomly on her shoulders, proudly raising her small head, accepting the surprised or unexpected gazes of the little wizards around her. Yvonne stared at the silver needle blankly, and the mentality he had just adjusted exploded in an instant. Does this still allow ordinary wizards like them to live? Damn it, it's a bit worse. If I practice for a while, Professor McGonagall should praise me. Ron poked the table with his wand and stared at Hermione depressed. It seems to be annoyed with the glory that he was taken away. Yvonne glanced at Ron's table because he lost his magic power and turned back into an unknown object of matches again. He felt that Ron would not be able to reach Hermione's current level even after a few more lessons. Although he is not much better, he even said it was even worse. Yvonne sighed a little helplessly. What about the talent report after he said that after crossing? It is said that soul integration will lead to a substantial increase in mental power? The common routines in various novels did not show the slightest expression in Ivan's body. Only then can I understand how pertinent the Sorting Hat's evaluation of his talent is. Of course, Transfiguration has been unable to stabilize. Ivan guessed that in addition to talent, another part should be caused by the sharp drop in the wand fit caused by the soul replacement. If magic power is equal to electricity, and a magic wand is equivalent to a plug and wiring, then the spell is all kinds of electrical appliances. Nowadays, the wires have short-circuit problems from time to time, and the lights are naturally not working properly. However, Ivan has not been able to solve the problem of the magic wand in a short time. I am afraid that this magic wand will be used for the last semester. After fighting with the match again for a while, the first class of transformation finally came to an end, and until the end, Ivan did not stabilize the shape of the match after being deformed. On the contrary, I found a little trick that is not very useful, that is, after condensing the magic power through the magic wand in a disorderly manner, it can form a slender magic beam. The only function is to return the unstable transformation technique to its original shape. This was accidentally discovered by Ivan when he almost exploded the match after he failed to release the transfiguration spell for the nth time. It was of no use other than to play tricks on Ron in the transfiguration class. Just as Professor McGonagall announced the end of Get Out of Class on stage, another voice resounded in Ivan. Ding! After the host's unremitting efforts, the transformation teaching class is over, please continue to work hard. This comprehensive class evaluation, medium evaluator, Minerva McGonagall reward, academic points *5, looking at the information that suddenly appeared in his mind, Ivan had never thought of it before. Can I get rewards for class? Ivan was a little surprised, especially when he saw the 3 words academic achievement point, he even complained about it. How could it be the same as when he was in college before? Apparently, it is evaluated by the professors of each subject. What about the final exam? If the exam is good or bad, there will be corresponding rewards and punishments, right? Of course, Tuco returns to Tuco. Ivan is still very happy to be able to discover a function of the system again, but I don't know what this grade point can be used for. After triggering the system panel, Ivan noticed the grade point. Maybe it's because I haven't gotten it before, and related functions have not been turned on. After this time, it didn't take long for Ivan to find the new redemption option in the panel. Ivan was slightly disappointed that there was only one solitary SWIBA experience card in the entire redemption column. The exchange required 100 academic points. The effect was to greatly improve the efficiency of learning within an hour. Ivan had never imagined to exchange powerful magic or forbidden curse before. Is this the rhythm of learning to the end? Ivan glanced at the 5 grade points that he had obtained after studying one class, and suddenly became a little desperate. Hogwarts was only 3 to 5 class hours a day. According to the 5-point grade point for each class, wouldn't it take 5 days of accumulation to redeem the 1 SWIBA experience card? This is too bad, right? What can you learn in 1 hour? But this is the end of the matter. Ivan has nothing to do with UU reading www.uugonshu.com. Apart from this exchange, Ivan has no other way to improve this inefficient learning efficiency. What else can I do? Study well. The transfiguration class is over, and the boring history of magic is next. Professor Binns, who teaches, is a stale ghost. The entire class is spent talking and teaching, ignoring the children. The situation of the wizards. This makes Ivan a little uncomfortable. The achievement of grade points is obviously related to the evaluation of his class by the professor, and the teaching method of the history of magic. Ivan does not even have the opportunity to improve the evaluation. After a whole class, Ivan once again received a middle evaluation and 5 grade points. But soon, Ivan understood the benefits of the magic history class. Because in the next magic spell class, I will learn how to apply magic power to the object smoothly and affect the object, which is the basis for learning the floating spell. Due to the interference of the magic wand, Ivan spent a whole lesson. It was a success. During the period, the props used to cast the spell were blown up 3 times. The grades are a little better than Neville, and the fastest Miss Granger, only released 3 times and achieved success. For this reason, Yifan got a bad review in the class evaluation without exception, and only 2 grade points. The only good news is that after a few days of wandering around, the progress of the task in the task tree has reached 30%, with an average of 2 grade points for every additional percentage point. Got a total of 60 grade points, which is much faster than the reward for class every day. Also finally let Ivan see the hope of collecting 100 academic points and redeeming a SWIBA experience card. The quiet environment made Ivan thank the administrator Mrs. Pants very much in his heart. The library prohibition of loud noise is indeed necessary. As the basic theoretical book of Transfiguration Mantra, the difficulty of Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration is not high, but the thick pages obviously cannot be read in a short time. 1 hour passed in a flash, and Ivan's hand only turned over a third of the page. After thinking about it, Ivan continued to look down at the book, and when he finished reading the whole book, another 1.5 passed. Hour. After watching for more than 2 hours, when Ivan put down the books, his mind became a little groggy. These age-old magic books usually like to add some strange and unexplainable words. It seems that only in this way can they show the mystery of magic, which makes Ivan very uncomfortable with people who are accustomed to modern books. Maybe this is a wizard. Ivan muttered to himself, thinking that this rather metaphysical way of thinking might be the gift of wizards. He can't understand it anyway. The system prompt that sounded in my mind once again exceeded Ivan's expectation, because the corresponding prompt was not triggered when I was reading the textbook during class. Is it to be finished? Ivan suddenly noticed the difference. He hadn't read any magic book before, so the difference should be this. After had an idea in his mind, Ivan turned to complain about the system's prompt sound that was indistinguishable from the game log. Ivan feels that after reading the book, although there are some things that I don't understand, it shouldn't be said to be boring and difficult to understand, right? 27% of the reading progress, Ivan can understand. Everyone who has read the book knows that after reading it, it does not mean that you can remember all the knowledge in the book and use it freely. Otherwise, when taking the exam, wouldn't everyone get full marks? Let's take a look at the so-called SWIBA experience card now. Ivan muttered to himself in a low voice, and then spent 100 points to exchange the SWIBA experience card. For an instant, Ivan felt something exploded in his brain. The knowledge he had learned recently and the content of the books he had read seemed to keep pouring out, and within just half a minute. After being classified and summed up, various thoughts gradually became clear. This feeling is like using a worn-out old-fashioned computer and suddenly replacing it with the latest model. A minute later, Ivan opened his closed eyes, and lightly brushed the cover of the book The Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration with his right hand. Although he had not opened it yet, the content he had read before had already surfaced in his mind. Originally felt obscure and difficult to understand, but the words and sentences of God's babble combined with the context seemed to have a new way of interpreting them. The Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, as the basic book used by Hogwarts to teach little wizards, must have been revised many times, refined and concise, at least for wizards. When Ivan turned the pages of the book and recollected it, Ivan had actually understood the contents of the book in general, and the rest was to revisit the places that I didn't understand before. Page 3, Chapter 2, Page 7, Chapter 13. Ivan's hand was flipping rapidly on the Beginner's Guide to Transformation, and the index of reading progress in his mind also rapidly increased. In less than 20 minutes, Ivan has already read the entire book again. At the moment Ivan put down the book, 2 reminders rang in his mind. It is worth mentioning that the upgrade of the Transfiguration spell, Ivan did not feel any, neither did he feel the upgrade effect of a golden light in place, nor did he feel any other enhancement effects. Only after understanding the principle of the transformation curse, Ivan felt that releasing the transformation curse was no longer a problem. At least the trick of turning a match into a silver needle was already easy for Ivan. Even holding the wand that is not very aura will not affect his performance, at best, the effect is slightly weaker. This is the same as Ivan previously guessed. The proficiency and increase will not directly increase his strength, but more equivalent to expressing his strength through proficiency. Seeing that the expiration time of the Swiba experience card was about 37 minutes, Ivan did not stop at all, sprinted to the bookshelf and picked up the most recent copy of Basic Magic Principle Detailed Explanation and turned it over. As soon as I started, Ivan felt that the book was thicker than he thought. The content in the book www.yuyuganshu.com is the analysis of commonly used magic spells and some conjectures about the composition of magic. If this kind of purely theoretical books were replaced at other times, Ivan would probably find it boring, but this time I read it vigorously. Even the system prompts that sounded in Ivan's mind halfway through, Ivan did not go. Guan, immerse yourself in the ocean of knowledge. However, Ivan, who was halfway through the book, suddenly changed his expression slightly. He felt that his clear brain was covered with a white mist, and his thoughts were forcibly interrupted. This kind of feeling is as if someone was shocked and forced to hold back when the water was released to the heart's content. I suddenly became stupid? Ivan stared blankly at the detailed explanation of the magic spell in front of him, and for a while it was a little difficult to adapt to the change in his IQ. Ivan didn't react until he stood there for a while, tapped his dizzy head lightly, and took a closer look at the time for the 30 minutes of Swiba experience card that had passed. Ivan looked at the half of the unread pages in his hand, and reopened it unwillingly, but the content of the other half suddenly became esoteric and incomprehensible. The efficiency of reading suddenly decreased by several times, which made it feel. Ivan, who has passed the bonus of Swiba mode, is difficult to accept. Seeing a few pages, Ivan sighed and put down the book in his hand. After experiencing the Swiba mode for an hour, Ivan has a deep understanding of the power of this exchange. This is not just a question of increasing the learning speed several times, including the overall improvement of understanding and thinking ability, and it can completely turn a scumbag into a scholastic or even a scholastic existence. There are almost no incomprehensible problems in learning knowledge, just learn it. In the process of the experiment just now, Ivan also noticed a hidden factor, that is, his own knowledge accumulation will also affect the efficiency and speed of learning. This is why it only takes about 20 minutes to read the Beginner's Transformation Guide, and the time to read the Basic Magic Principle is much slower, 30 minutes only half the time. The quick reading of the Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, on the one hand, is because Ivan himself has some foundation to release the Transfiguration spell, and on the other hand, because he has read this book just now and has an understanding of the content of the book. And the detailed explanation of basic mantra principles involves a wide range of knowledge, and Ivan has not read it in advance, so the reading speed is relatively slow. After analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of the Swiba experience card, Ivan immediately realized that he wanted to make good use of this hour. The most optimized solution was to read the corresponding book first, and then use the Swiba experience card after reading it. Improve your comprehension and thinking skills and review it again, so that you can make the most of your time. And every time you understand a magic book thoroughly, you will be rewarded with academic points. In addition to increasing the level of the magic spell, the accumulated academic points can be used to exchange for the Swiba experience card. Under such a cycle, isn't the strength will advance by leaps and bounds? Just now Ivan just finished half of the detailed explanation of basic mantra principles. All the spells he knows have increased a lot of proficiency. Among them, the levitating curse and the disarming curse have risen to the same level as the transfiguration curse, and they are rewarded again. 10 academic grade points. This makes Ivan's grade points that were cleared to 0 again by 20 points, which greatly reduces the time to gather grade points next time. Thinking of this, Yvonne looked at the vast magic books in the library, and suddenly realized that, these are all grade points. If I can read them all, it is difficult for Yvonne to imagine how much his strength will grow. Thinking of this, Yvonne regained his fighting spirit. However, things were counterproductive. When Yvonne was about to work hard, he was told that it was time for the lights to be turned off in the library. Yvonne then realized that he had been in the library for more than 3 hours. Children, it is important to learn knowledge, but it is also important to pay attention to the combination of work and rest. As for now, give me back to the dormitory of the respective college. Mrs. Pins drove away the little wizards who were still planning to stay in the library. As the librarian at Hogwarts, she certainly does not hate the little wizard who likes knowledge, as long as she doesn't make a big noise in the library, but the principal of the library has regulations on the opening hours, and Mrs. Pins does not good extension. Yvonne stepped forward at this moment, took half of the detailed explanation of basic magic principles in his hand, and gestured. Madam, can I borrow this book? Of course, as long as it can be returned within the specified time. Mrs. Pins glanced at the book and nodded casually after seeing the title of the book. After speaking, Mrs. Pins turned to search in the library. There are always a few people who like to hide themselves in a sea of books, with the intent to get through it, waiting for the lights to be turned off and then slip into the forbidden book area. Of course, there are some people who are fascinated and forget the time. Thank you. Yvonne politely nodded his head and thanked him, and then took the book and left the library. He couldn't wait to go back and try the magic that gained promotion. Let me. Yet. Yvonne, who hadn't walked a few steps before, only had time to hear a few crisp female voices behind him, and felt that he was hit by someone, and his forehead was in close contact with the wall, and then he sat down. On the ground, the detailed explanation of basic mantra principles in his hand also fell to the ground. Fortunately, the force of the impact was not heavy, so Yvonne touched his flushed forehead and got up. Yvonne picked up the book first, and then he noticed the little girl who bumped into him carelessly. The first thing that catches the eye is the thick brown hair, which is messy and obviously lacks the owner's care. The standard wizard robe looks a bit wide when worn, and there are several magic books scattered on the side. Hermione. Yvonne was stunned, but quickly figured out the situation. It is estimated that when our now tall lady was kicked out of the library by Mrs. Pins, she was too anxious, so she ran into him directly from behind. Yvonne. Hermione was hit hard at once, until she was supported by Yvonne before she stood up. Oh, sorry, I might have been a little confused before, I didn't expect to bump into you. It's okay, just pay attention next time. After Yvonne picked up the book on the floor and handed it back to Hermione, he shook his head and said he didn't care. Hermione, however, immediately opened the chattering box after seeing the book in Ivan's hand, and said incessantly. I also borrowed this book detailed explanation of basic magic principles before, and I learned many new magic skills. My god, I didn't even know that strong will can greatly increase the power of some spells, but this requires wizards to have a high magic control ability, otherwise, it is very likely to make the magic is out of control. At this point, Hermione seemed to be thinking of something, her voice became louder and said. By the way, learning requires understanding and memorization, not just flipping through the book from beginning to end. Rather than reading books like basic mantra principles, I think you should memorize all the textbooks first. Hermione confided her thoughts or experience in a burst of cannonballs, perhaps she was helping Yvonne consciously, and there was always a sense of superiority. Yvonne knew that Hermione must have seen her learning with the Swiba experience card in the second half, so I kindly reminded her, but Hermione's high-pitched tone still made Yvonne frown insignificantly. Thank you for reminding, but I think everyone has their own way of learning. Yvonne said lightly, and then I understood a little bit why Harry, Ron, and other little wizards shouldn't wait to see Hermione who is smart. I have to say that before Halloween, Miss Granger's character is really not very likable. How is this possible? Hermione still wanted to continue preaching, but Yvonne interrupted her as soon as she spoke. Quick deformation. Yvonne waved his magic wand and tapped it on the parchment that Hermione used to make notes. The paper vibrated slightly, and then it swelled and deformed, and the slightly rough parchment surface slowly became smooth. No time. Right in front of Hermione, within a second or two, Yvonne went from chanting the spell to waving his wand in one go. The standard was just like the demonstration by Professor McGonagall in class, and the parchment has now become a thin jade slab. Hermione opened her mouth wide and her face was full of disbelief. She still remembered that in the polymorphology class yesterday, Yvonne obviously couldn't stabilize the polymorph spell. Why did she become so powerful today? After completing the transformation, Yvonne didn't even stay longer, leaving Hermione, who was still standing in a daze, and left alone and returned to the Gryffindor lounge. Yvonne, who was holding a book, was walking on the way back to the bedroom, and just hit Harry and Ron, who were holding the wizard flag, and the two of them had a ghostly expression. Ron looked at the detailed explanation of basic spell principles in Ivan's hand, his eyes were about to stare, and the knight he was holding in his right hand fell onto the table with a snap. The armor of the knight who fell from the sky was smashed and smashed. He cursed and slashed the nail of Ron's left hand with a toothpick-thick sword. "Oh, it hurts." Ron's left hand trembled sharply, flying the knight to the side, then looking at his cracked nails, angrily picked up the cup and smashed the knight who had hurt him, and then threw them all into the box. Waiting for automatic repair. Then Ron clutched his thumb and said to Harry with a worried expression on his face. "Harry, do you think Yvonne will become like Hermione in the future? This, shouldn't it?" Harry was also a little unsure. The two shuddered at the thought of the two Hermiones pointing at them. Yvonne returned to the dormitory, not knowing that Harry and Ron were talking about themselves in the lounge. At this meeting, Ivan's attention has long shifted to the changes in various values in the system. Yvonne Hall's occupation, wizard enchantments, Fear Curse Level 1, Floating Curse Level 1, Transformation Curse Level 1, Disarming Curse Level 1, Bright Curse Level 1. Knowledge Theory, Magic Item Making Level 0, Basic Magic Principle Level 0, Magic Item, Magic Wand Magic, Medium Fit, 72.5%. Academic Points, 20. Only 1 hour of Learning Master Experience Card. The improvement is not small, Ivan's spells have basically been upgraded to a level. Just as the other people in the dormitory were not there, Yvonne used boxes, stools, pillows, etc. to experiment with the power of the levitating curse and the disarming curse. Yogadam Leviosa, accept your weapon. After a few minutes of self-entertainment, Yvonne looked at the pillows from the head of the bed that was bombarded by the disarming curse to the end of the bed, as well as the boxes and stools floating in the air slowly falling down, filled with a sense of accomplishment. This is the power of magic. For this mysterious and unpredictable supernatural ability, few people can resist its temptation. What's more, before he died from a serious illness in his previous life, Yvonne, who was lying on the hospital bed, liked to read all kinds of magic and fantasy books. It's a pity that in the past few days Yvonne has just passed through, due to various reasons, even the most basic spell has not been successfully released. Now that several magics have been released at once, Yvonne is naturally excited. Now no matter what I see, Yvonne wants to throw a transformation spell and a floating spell on it. After experimenting for more than 10 minutes, Ivan's brain has become a little groggy, which is obviously a sign of magic overdraft. In the process of frequently casting spells, Yvonne probably understood the limit of his ability. The first is the levitating curse. Yvonne can hover an empty box 1 meter in the air for nearly 40 seconds at most, or float his bed for 5 seconds, but the height of the suspension is only about 30 centimeters. Is followed by a transformation spell, which can change an object's form or even its nature into another object within a period of time. This is also the spell that Yvonne is most interested in. After practicing to the depths, he can even turn inanimate objects into living animals like Professor McGonagall. I just don't know if this transformation spell can be used against wizards. For example, when facing an enemy, a transformation spell will turn the enemy into a tree, a brick, a pig, a cow, a sheep, or turning the shields in front of and behind the hostile wizard into beasts and traps, which can also have the effect of defeating the enemy with one blow. But Ivan frowned when he thought of this, because in retrospect he realized that in the original book, it seems that few people would do this. Even Professor McGonagall, who is proficient in the transformation spell, did not apply the transformation spell on the hostile wizard in the final battle. Is it because ordinary transformation spells cannot be used on living bodies? The transformable curse is powerful enough to transform non-living forms into living forms. There is no reason to reverse this process. Hagrid also used the spell to make the little fat Dudley who bullied Harry grow a pigtail. Draco also has a black history of being transformed into a ferret, which shows that the transformation spell can directly act on the human body. Is it because of the influence of magic? Does the wizard possess certain resistance to the transformation spell? The stronger the resistance, the more stacks? What is that magic power? Why can wizards use all kinds of incredible magic? Ivan thought of the only animagus transformation that can affect a powerful wizard. Even such a powerful and difficult magic can only transform the wizard into a specific animal, and it cannot achieve the desired form at will. This is more like a solidified transformation spell, allowing the wizard to switch back and forth between the two forms without flaws and no time limit. Forget it, what do I want to do now? Ivan lightly stroked his forehead. He is just a first-year little wizard, and the curse is only a level that can be released. It's no use thinking so much. After experimenting all the levitating curses, transforming curses, brightening curses, and disarming curses, reading www.uukonshu.com, Ivan probably had an estimate of his own strength. Is about the more powerful level among ordinary first-year little wizards. After experimenting with the effects of ordinary spells, Ivan put his gaze on the fear spell, which is a black magic. This curse that appeared in the system after he crossed to Hogwarts, Ivan had never used it before. Fear is coming. Ivan recalled the sequence of releasing magic in his memory, waving his wand and hitting Macca's head. Goo goo, a dim purple light flashed. Macca tilted his head and looked at Ivan innocently. It's no use. Ivan looked at Macca, who didn't respond, and couldn't help but feel a little strange. Fear is coming, fear is coming. Ivan cast spells one after another, and the purple light directly enveloped Macca, but Macca thought that Ivan was playing with it, so he held the tip of the wand with his hook-shaped beak and pulled it up. Ivan reluctantly took the wand back, otherwise he would be broken by Macca, and then looked at the fear curse in the system magic bar. Logically speaking, he should be able to release normally after the first level of the spell. Or... Ivan suddenly remembered the memory that popped in his mind when he was invaded by the Sorting Hat. Fear. Ivan closed his eyes and thought for a while, then opened his eyes just to see the grey-black mouse dozing on Ron's table. After a little thought, Ivan let go of the owl Macca, who was his messenger. Holding the wand and walking over. And Zebra is sleeping soundly right now. There are still scented beans in the corners of his mouth, his small paws are divided into 4 fingers, and occasionally unconsciously scratching on the table. It seems that he is having a dream.